everyone. Welcome back to the Free Radical podcast. This is your host, Swami Padamanabha, and I'm here today with a very unique guest in a very unique episode in presence. I never done it presence, and it deserves that because it's a very unique guest, friend, mentor, source of great inspiration. It's like
thank you.
A dream come true, Father Richard Rohr. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. So for those rare people who still do not know who is Father Richard, he's an author, a Franciscan monk, ecumenical friar. Sorry.
I'm not a monk. I know it doesn't. To most people, it doesn't make any difference, but I'm a friar.
Thank you. Thank you for the correction. So Father Richard is a Franciscan friar, ecumenical teacher, author of how many books? We lost count probably.
Too many.
Yeah, too many, but beautiful, incredible books. Like I remember reading Falling Upward, Everything Belongs, Universal Christ, and Breathing Underwater, on the 12 steps, and so on and so forth. And also Father Richard is the founder of the CAC, the Center for Action and Contemplation. We'll be talking a little bit about that. And for those who would like to know more about Richard and his work, you can visit his website. I'm sharing it now, cac.org for Center for Action and Contemplation, cac.org. And today is my second time I'm visiting New Mexico. I'm meeting Richard in person. First time was last year. We make a whole beautiful road trip from North Carolina till New Mexico with Bhakti.
I was so impressed. You traveled all this way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I recall you were asking us like by why you did all this journey. Why? And we were pointing back like we're bringing a mirror and showing the mirror to you. That's the answer.
Thank you.
But that the generosity came from you, because I remember sending you a letter of gratitude for the inspiration I received from you in very difficult times in my life and transitional dark nights of my soul, and you were a great support. And I sent you a handwritten letter that somehow you ended up reading 3 months after. It got like lost in between.
Oh, there was a period.
Yeah, and I totally forgot. I just sent the letter and
forgot about
I expressed my gratitude. I'm not expecting an answer. You're very busy.
Oh.
And after like 3 months, you replied very kindly and invited. Whenever you're nearby here, visit. And I was like,
I see.
And I felt, I'm not nearby, but I can be nearby very quickly. And then we planned our road trip, and there we were for a few days with you, beautiful, and here's the second time. So
good.
Having the fortune to having you today for our podcast. Thank you
You're
again.
most welcome. I always say, what else am I good for? I don't have a lot of energy, so to share with someone like you is a privilege and a gift to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Generally, I begin my conversations asking my guests, like, why did they accept to be here today? What type of contribution you think we can make to the world with today's conversation, so to say? So I don't know if you have anything to contribute in relation to what contribution we can make today by our words here.
I've been quoting a Franciscan philosopher of the 13th century, William of Ockham. I'm sure you've never heard of him, but
Occam's
razor.
We talked yesterday about him, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's why he's on my mind. And he says the truer answer is always more likely a simpler answer.
Mm-hmm.
And your correspondence and now your book shows me you know how to appreciate that. Not to let religion get complex or overly tied to formulations or this ritual or that ritual. And so when someone is already at that point of simplification, I enjoy talking to them. So it was easy to say yes to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for being a yes person also. Like you always say, let's begin with an ontological yes.
Ontological. Boy, you're a good student. Thank you.
Try my best, yes. So Richard, I especially for many reasons, I appreciate you are here today with us, with me, with us, by extension. One of those being that I know that you're in your how do you say today? Like the third half of life.
Third half of life.
Okay.
Forgive the terrible mathematics. Yeah, but people started asking me, "Are you in the second half of life?" Because I wrote a book on it.
Yeah.
I said, "I don't think I am. What I call the second half of life largely doesn't apply anymore." I don't know when I moved, but it feels like I did.
No, you're in a beautiful space, so inspiring
I
to all of
hope
us.
so.
So in that connection, you're in a situation, in a stage where, of course, your health is a little fragile, and and you have been recently, not recently, but for many years, going through how many cancers already? 4, 5? We lost count.
5 unrelated cancers. They want to do a genetic study on my body.
Yeah.
You heard that. To understand how someone can have 5 unrelated cancers and each one I'm healed of with medical care.
Yeah.
But so I don't know what God's message is, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to stay. Either one is okay. So
I wanted to begin our conversation going to the end, quote unquote, end in terms of death. No, in the sense that you told us last year when we visited you, like, I was ready after my first cancer, after the second, but God has some other plan still. So, but a few words that I wanted to ask you, a few words on death and your particular take on death in this stage you are. I mean, I recall you talking about death from so many perspectives, even speaking of prayer as a training in dying, which is I kind of about relating that to the fact of being at peace with leaving this body. If you know how to die before dying. But I don't know if you have any thoughts in terms of, let's begin talking with death. People doesn't like to talk about death. Let's begin the podcast talking about what most people is not talking about.
You know, it's so obvious. Every movie, picture, documentary you've ever seen, I often look at them if they're over 70 years old and say, all those people are dead. Mm-hmm. They came and they went. They came and they went. What makes you think, I don't know what is that makes us think that we'll be different. Mm-hmm. So clearly death is a part of life. Mm-hmm. That might be a cliche.
It is not.
But to recognize that and to not just accept it, but recognize the good meaning in it, that what this gift of life is limited, life on this earth. Mm-hmm. So God has granted me that grace, and it is a grace. Mm-hmm. If it happens today, I'm fine. And it's not as if I know what's on the other side of this passing over. Mm-hmm. In the Christian scriptures, St. Paul says, eye has not seen, nor ear has heard what God has prepared for those who love. So I hope I've loved, because that's to live the eternal mystery on this side of the Passover. I haven't loved greatly like the great saints and mystics, but I've tried. Yeah.
Thank you for your words, Richard. And I always thought like death kind of puts life in context, so there to say. No? It's like a way of contextualizing life.
There you go.
Approaching death, talking about it, being okay with that, and for me, it's humbling to witness living presence of someone who is walking the talk and saying, "I'm okay with dying," and I have full trust of what's on the other side, even if I cannot control that mystery, so to say.
Yes. That's where I'm at. And it's all a gift. Yes. I didn't know how to formulate it. But I do think years of trying to contemplate, I now call it gazing. You've heard that.
Yeah.
I gazed for an hour and a half yesterday, just staring at whatever is in front of my eyes. And that's my present form of prayer. And it puts you in touch with the real. It isn't very ideological or it's just so practical. Just
as you
look.
say yesterday, so simple it doesn't sound like a practice in itself, so to say, right?
Just look until it begins to open up and shine. And there's yes inside of it. And it always comes. Yeah, it's a good way to live.
It reminds me, in our particular tradition, it's described that ideally someone at the very end of one's life and through spiritual practice is basically doing that. It's like seeing God in everything in God, and contemplating that is just like more than enough.
Why do we speak of being different religions?
Yes.
I mean, it's all the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember talking with Ilya Delio last year, and I was sharing something of our quote-unquote tradition. When I say our, I don't want to establish a boundary with other traditions.
But you gotta.
And I was talking, and at one point Ilya's nodding and listening to me, and yes. And at one point she says, I think I'm a Hindu. And I felt immediately inspired to say, well, when I'm listening to you, I think I'm a Christian. So how much we can draw these boundaries among one another.
She's a good Franciscan sister.
Yes.
Her cosmology is wonderfully scientifically formed. She's more educated as a scientist than I am. Mine is all in philosophy and theology and psychology. But today, cosmology is just opening up. Well, today there's going to be an eclipse.
Yes.
Everybody's cosmologically minded today. Yeah.
Actually, somehow the process of the eclipse has started, and it will reach its peak in a few hours. So we are doing it right now in the same moment. So, Richard, you have been such a great inspiration for me, and I want to make that public in front of the camera, especially in the last years and with my last book of Radical Personalism, that were kind to receive some copies of that. And even you were carrying one copy of it yesterday, to my embarrassment.
To show off. Just the title is brilliant. Radical Personalism. Tell me about it. But... or maybe you want me. I just opened it, and wherever I opened it, I said, I think that way too. I agree with that.
Probably because when you open that section, it's a quote of yours that I'm sharing.
I don't think so.
Because you are very present in those pages. As I tell everyone, just go to the endnotes part and you'll see Richard's.
Happy. Thank you.
So my point is that by your inspiration and others like Brian McLaren, Ilya Delio, and Thomas Merton and other Christian mystics, I mentioned in my book how I was able to kind of rediscover my own tradition by going to Christianity and finding certain ways in certain truths are being shaped and presented.
That's the best.
And I returned to my tradition and realized, we had also those truths, but I never saw them until I found them in this tradition expressed in this way. So, I was wondering, if I'm rediscovering my tradition by the grace of quote unquote other tradition, how much the other is other tradition, if it's helping me rediscover my own tradition.
Well, you, at a certain level, and I don't mean that in an elitist way, but there's a certain point of growth where the similarities outdo the dissimilarities. I wish we could get more people there, but they start with certain rituals and practices and nomenclature, and they get trapped there. And God understands that, but it's not where you should stay. Keep moving, and if you keep radical personalism, you'll keep moving. It's
an ongoing affair. So for me personally, some of the main themes that somehow mystical Christianity enlightened me about in connection to my tradition were, for example, the principle of unconditional love and how we are all fully accepted, fully loved by the divine, as you say beautifully yesterday. Like, stop losing time thinking about whether you are saved or not. Like, don't have a doubt about that, so you can use your time in better things. Maybe asking yourself what I'm saved for. Now, what to do with my salvation, so to say, right?
Well, you remember the good things. without meaning to, a certain kind of Christian language has made so many Christians self-preoccupied with their own salvation. And they themselves are not even fully sure what that means. But I think if you are saved, you stop worrying about salvation or whether you are. You know that you've already touched upon the one, the good, the beautiful, the true.
Yeah.
Once you've touched it, you've touched it, you know. Yeah.
Now it is so similar to different statements from the Bhagavad Gita and our text, in which God himself is saying that there's no loss nor diminution. Whatever you have acquired, it will never be lost. And I protect you, you will never perish. And basically you are already saved and less concern for the real thing, let's say.
Well put. Well put. I can't improve on that.
You
I
can
don't
for
need
sure.
to improve on
you
that.
can, but you're humble enough. So Richard, in terms of unconditional love, what comes to mind, it's funny because you taught me unconditional love by using terms from my own tradition, and you use a term, Sanskrit term called darshan, which is a Sanskrit term which doesn't have to do so much with seeing, but with being seen.
Being seen.
Yeah, and you emphasize, I think that's falling upward, and you mentioned how darshan means to learn to be seen by God and to learn to accept his glance of unconditional love and to learn to love, in the words of Saint John of the Cross, love what God sees in you. Like this deep sense of self-acceptance. So I don't know if you have any words to share in that connection, because I think, at least speaking for my tradition and probably other traditions, we need so much to be reminded how we are already accepted, already loved, and we don't need to create a performance to deserve that, so to say, because unconditional love is too much to be deserved, so to say.
Yes. Whoever we call God, first of all, no, it's always a mystery. But whatever that mystery is the only mystery that can receive whatever you project upon it. Even if you make God, as a lot of Christians do, into a wrathful, angry, judgmental person, God says, as we're okay, I'll work with that. It's not very helpful. But the one who can receive all we project, all the parts of ourselves, the parts that we don't like, we think God doesn't like, she is the total receiver. I just can't comprehend God any other way. It works.
Total receiver, beautiful.
Total receiver.
Beautiful.
And total giver.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd emphasize the receiver.
Yes. Thank you for that. And I think that allows so much for embracing vulnerability in a way more integral way, that I'm totally accepted. I already belong. As Brené Brown will say, I don't need to fit in, but to belong. And as you will say, everything already belongs.
Everything belongs. It wouldn't be here if it didn't belong.
Yeah, exactly. That's so beautifully put. And God is so vulnerable himself, as in your tradition you will depict the figure of Jesus, and we have our own take on that. God is almighty and all vulnerable, as you will say, and that's empowering us to be all vulnerable ourselves and be willing to show up and have the courage to show up when we have no control over the outcome, but it's okay.
It's okay. Well, you're there. And you're only 20, huh?
20? You are so generous, Richard.
20-something.
20-something, 43.
Oh, St. Francis died at 43.
Okay.
He put it together by 43.
Better I'm preparing myself then. I have to be ready. Another topic, Richard, that I really feel indebted toward you and mystical Christianity in terms of me rediscovering my tradition was this principle of how everything is in constant evolution. like in constant
Yes.
expansion and growth
How can you deny
and
that?
ever freshness. And that has been so impactful for me that I couldn't resist just now trying to write a book about it. And I'm on the process of that. So I'm writing 4 chapters. First chapter, how love is ever evolving, then how God is ever evolving in connection to love, then how we are ever evolving, our potential is ever evolving in connection to God and love, and how the world of matter is also ever evolving. So can I share a quote that you mentioned on this topic?
Let me
Please.
hear it.
I don't want to embarrass you. I know you're humble enough to learn from yourself.
I wish I were humble, but go ahead.
Now I know that you will listen to this, and it's yours, but also it's through you. So
Okay, let's hear
you
it.
say, evolutionary thinking sends us on a trajectory where the ride is itself the destination, and the goal is never clearly in sight. To stay on the ride, to trust the trajectory, to know it is moving and moving somewhere always better, is just another way to describe faith.
Yeah.
We are all in evolution all the time, it seems to me. It is the best, the truest way to think. Amen.
Wow.
I will quote that in my book with or
book
without
was
your
that
permission.
in?
That was quoted in the Whining. How do you pronounce the journal that you?
Wanting.
Yeah, in the one on evolution.
Oh, on evolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it's a shame that the word to some Christians is still anathema. They want constant stability, and they can't imagine that the only constant stability is change. I mean, I live here close to the Grand Canyon, and the canyon's even closer. And you just stand there, and there it is, all the layers. How can you deny that the earth itself is millions of years old? And I always say, what was God doing all that time? Just waiting for me to appear or you to appear? There was some meaning in that apart from human beings, and particularly this human being. I just come along and I get to think about it. But my thinking doesn't make it so. It was there showing its goodness inherently in itself, by itself, for itself. What was God doing when dinosaurs were eating grass for millions of years? Millions.
200 million years or something. You cannot even calculate. Yeah.
You can't comprehend it. And not feeling, okay, we got to race this up. So we have the United States of America, or we have Argentina, or we have Italy. It's all fine, but it's all a part. And we fall in love with the parts instead of the whole. Anyway,
I think an ever evolving perspective on God and reality gives such a relaxed, how to say, as you say before, like relaxed in terms of I don't need to get to from point A to point B to reach to a certain idea of perfection, like a fixed maximum, and I have to reach there at some point, but it's always a continual arrival, so to say.
It's very nice. Continual arrival. Yeah, which allows each day to be fresh.
Yeah.
You don't have to drag the mistakes of the past into it.
Yeah. In our tradition, we'll say we are practicing Bhakti, which means devotion and love for God. We are already doing that, and we already doing what we want to do forever, which is to love Him, to serve Him and everything. So in one sense, the goal, we didn't reach the goal, the goal reached us, so to say. Love was extended to us.
Very good.
And the goal is there, and it's ongoing. So it's a perpetual arrival. Yeah.
I mean, the old conservative Baltimore Catechism is what Catholics of my generation were raised on. Why were we born? To know, love, and serve God in this world and the next. There it is.
Yeah.
See, that's what so many of our kids don't enjoy. I don't know if they were never taught that, or they just chose not to believe that. But it leaves you unmoored in the universe. Yeah. That doesn't mean God doesn't love them just as much as God loves me, but they don't enjoy it as much. And it's so often written on their face, the anguished look, which must make God very sad. Yeah.
Richard, in connection to this, one more point that comes to my mind in terms of what so many other things I've received and been nourished by Christianity, but one of them is this idea of God as mystery, which is tied with this idea of God as ever evolving, because if he's ever evolving, you cannot control it, you cannot anticipate it. It's like unpredictable in its unfolding. So
uncontrollable.
So it becomes a mystery unto himself. And in our particular tradition, I will say we have lots of detailed information about who God is in our perspective. What does he do in eternity, so to say, that in one sense it's a blessing, but also it can become a curse in the sense of we can become so certain in terms of we know all this.
We know
more than, even if you want to make a comparison with other traditions, we could say we have more information than them, and we just become stagnant and complacent in toxic certainty. So I really appreciate how Christians deal with the principle of mystery and are able to draw so much from that as well, to say so much about that which is a mystery.
Some Christians, I'm afraid, you've heard me say, the opposite of faith is not doubt.
Yes.
The opposite of faith is certitude. And in this highly moving world, evolving, a lot of people's only way to get a sense of security is to create mental certitudes. Create. They aren't given, they're created by the need of this ego. I want certitudes that I can hold on to. The only certitude I think that the Bible really gives us is the ever faithful love of God. The Hebrew word is hesed.
That's enough for coexisting with everything else being uncertain.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
I don't need to teach you. You got it all.
No, please. I'm just parroting many things that I received from you. I remember, so I think, how do you pronounce Dietrich Bonhoeffer?
Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah, and he will say this.
I met his girlfriend once, but anyway.
Okay. That's for another episode, Richard. And he will say this, not like the duty of the theologian is to preserve the mysterious mystery, no, instead of trying to solve the mystery.
I didn't know he said that.
Yeah, you used to quote Buddhist authors saying, like, do not plunder the mystery with concepts. Yeah.
A Buddhist author said that?
Yeah. You quoted that, I think, in Falling Upward.
Do not plunder with concepts.
Yeah, do not plunder the mystery with concepts. Yeah, I think it requires so much humility and so much trust and surrender to coexist with uncertainty and have this deeper foundational trust that, things. I remember seeing once a little sign. There was like a Buddhist monk sitting in a rock in the midst of a lake. So it was a typical postcard, and it says, "Relax, everything is out of control."
Oh,
like implying,
clever.
Yeah, generally we think I will relax when everything's under my control.
Everything is out of control. I like it. You'll be much happier if you let that be true. Yeah.
And I think you in your particular stage now in your life, you are finding so much relaxation in letting things out your control, so to say. And this is what I've witnessed these days. I like to go a few minutes in that direction because I've been these days in New Mexico. I came mostly to visit Richard and meet with Brian McLaren, but I was suddenly invited to a retreat they were organizing with inner members of the circle of the family, and I was fortunate to be there. And it was for me very, how to say, very humbling and very sobering to witness the exemplary way in which you are transitioning and delegating your responsibilities in the CAC, and how empowered these young generations are representing you, but being empowered by the trust you are investing in them as well.
It's effortless. They're such loving people. Boy, the center's over 35 years old. And it took us this long to get such a loving board, such a loving staff. You have to grow into it, where people recognize what they want to be a part of and bring that to it. So I'm quite content.
I can see that.
Yeah,
I can see. So I'm saying this because in many groups, including my own tradition, generally I don't see that type of exemplary transition from elders when they are willingly letting go position, responsibility, control, fully trusting younger generations and empowering them by that trust. Michael was describing, I think yesterday, the day before yesterday, even the ritual that you made when you were like letting go of your responsibility, how everyone was so moved by seeing you crossing this stick that was made.
Drew a line in the sand, and I took my cane and I reached across it. Is it going to be okay over there? As if it wouldn't be. What a gift for me that I don't have. It's not my job to worry about it anymore. It is what it is. And my intellect isn't going to make it better. I gave what I had to give. Yeah.
In that connection, it comes to mind a term we have in our tradition in Sanskrit, which is parampara, which basically refers to this system with a teacher or guru has a disciple and imparts knowledge and imparts a proper example, and the disciple ideally is not only copy-pasting what the teacher is giving, but taking that to another level by the grace of the teacher in service to the teacher, not in a proud, separate way. And I cannot avoid thinking of this idea of parampara, through which what you call living school of prophets, which I really like that expression. Each word has so much depth. Living school of prophets. And I wonder, I imagine you, even in the Bible, this is mentioned, right? Like Jesus said to his followers, okay, you're not only carrying the work I began, but you will even improve it.
You will go further.
Yeah.
What freedom for Jesus to say that. You will go further than I went.
Yeah, you will surpass what I've done, so to say. So I cannot avoid thinking that in terms of your transition and your empowering this young generation to go further. No?
I hope so. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that example. Can I share one quote from my tradition?
Okay, let me hear it.
In that connection, which speaks in terms of the dynamic spirit of a member of this type of systems, where you receive something and the nature of what you receive is such that it can always grow and improve. So it's a quote from a teacher of us called Bhakti Thakur, and he says, "A student is to read the facts with a view to create, and not with the object of fruitless retention. Students, like satellites, should reflect whatever light they receive from authors and not imprison facts and thoughts. The author's thought must have progress in the reader in the shape of correction or development. He is the best critic who can show the further development of an old thought. We must now allow ourselves to be led by those who lived and thought before us. We must think for ourselves and try to get further truths which are still undiscovered."
Wow.
So I think it kind of represents this.
Those are your words.
No. That's the words of one of our teachers from a few centuries ago already.
Wow.
From the 1800s.
Wow. Well put. So your tradition goes back to India?
Yeah.
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 God, there's something special about India.
You have been there a few times.
Yes.
Yeah.
number of times. I worked with Mother Teresa's community.
Mm-hmm.
I went up north to Ganges and
Mm.
Varanasi.
Varanasi. Yeah.
Stayed with the bishop in Agra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then gave the retreat to the priests of Kerala.
Okay.
It's over in the southwest quarter.
Yeah, you
Each
travel.
one was life-changing.
You travel India more than me.
No one can go to India and come back unchanged.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Oh, it's so true.
That's totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I appreciate in your presentation is that not only you have visited India and know different traditions, but even in your books you include different concepts and teachings from different traditions that you have been talking about. Our tradition, for example, and I would like to mention that in the Falling Upward at the end of chapter 8, for those who would like to see, you are referring to our tradition, which sometimes it's called Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Bhakti, or sometimes it's called
Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah, Bhakti Yoga, or sometimes Krishna consciousness. You refer as such in Falling Upward. And you say you refer to Krishna consciousness as a tradition which sees God's joy everywhere. No?
Sees God's
joy everywhere.
Yeah.
Now you are talking in that context about seeing the joy of the presence of God's joy everywhere, and you quote Krishna consciousness as a tradition which has that stance, which of course is real, it's true.
It's true.
Our teaching is that the background of everything is, we use the term ananda, which means like bliss. Or joy, and how the backdrop of all of reality is God's overflowing joy, that even extends in the form of material creation. Beautiful. And everything else. And in that connection, another thing that I learned a lot from Christianity is, if that's so, if God's joy is everywhere, even every atom is an embassy of the absolute, so to say.
Ooh,
I'm getting poetic now, Rich.
Oh, be poetic all you want. An embassy of the absolute. That's lovely.
Yeah. I mentioned that the radical personalism, like every atom is oozing with the presence of God, so to say.
Yes.
So, but in big part, I got inspiration from mystical Christianity and your teachings for that, to redeem my relationship with matter, instead of thinking of spiritual practice and evacuation plan, as Brian McLaren will put it, in the afterlife. No,
yeah,
I don't have to leave. It's not that I have to live here and go somewhere else. So I really appreciate your point. I don't know if you have any thoughts to share on that, like on matter as something sacred.
I've said, I don't know how much Western philosophy you had to study, but I had 4 years of it. Mm-hmm. And they say all of Western philosophy is a footnote to Plato. Mm-hmm. Well, Plato has matter and spirit, matter and soul at war with one another. Mm-hmm.
Dichotomy, duality.
Yeah, it's dualism. Mm-hmm. And I say, my gosh, Christianity has been more influenced by Plato than by Jesus. Jesus had no opposition between matter and spirit.
So we'll call him the first Western non-dual thinker.
Right? Yeah, which is why he isn't preoccupied with sexual sin or impurity, purity codes, dietary codes. Mm-hmm. He shows no interest whatsoever, because they all imply that this material world is inferior somehow. Mm-hmm. They don't have to, but in too many cases they do. It's a place to start, to divide the world between the pure and the impure, but you can't stay there, because after a while, if you keep living, that even the so-called impure is revelatory, is a gift. Yeah.
Yes, it is say there are only sacred things, undesecrated things.
Yeah, very good. And, there would be the dark side of India, the untouchables. I was so impressed in our Franciscan community, where I gave them a retreat in India. And the brotherhood was a mixture of all the social classes.
Mm-hmm.
They even hesitated to speak of them.
Hmm.
It was so deep in them, it was hard.
Hmm.
They knew who the untouchables were, but they tried not to treat them with any sense of inferiority.
Mm-hmm.
God bless them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's to be honest and sincere about that. That's still very prevalent even nowadays. If you go to India, in many places,
so deep,
so ingrained. And originally there was this thing called Varna Ashram, which was a social system, but actually it had more to do in intention with people have different natures and different inclinations and vocations, and each one has to be properly engaged accordingly. So they are a balanced human being.
Yes.
And on that foundation, they can engage in spirituality not as an evasive tool, but just as a natural consequence of that balance. But it has somehow distorted it many times and making it like a class elitist thing and so much discrimination. And it's paradoxical, India is a land of contrast and paradox in so many ways. But you can also find, and this is an interesting point, I don't know which are your thoughts in terms of someone can be very spiritually advanced in his her own meditation or I don't know practice, but at the same time show a dysfunctional stance in relation to things like outcasts or something. There may be some spiritual advancement, but that doesn't require necessarily human integration and wholeness. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, like because sometimes people can be kind of obsessed to become transcendentalists and spiritually holy, but the wholeness part is missing. There's only holiness without wholeness. No, I like to combine the two and propose holiness. So to say.
Perfect, of course, and that's found much more by letting go than by climbing up. Climbing up flatters the ego, but letting go of what's unnecessary.
Yeah.
What is just an idea in your head of superiority. That's the journey into such wholeness. Yeah. Divine perfection, you've heard me say this, is the ability to include imperfection.
Amen.
Include, not exclude. Oh, how come we can't get that straight? That's why Jesus is always touching the leper and eating with sinners, so-called. He has no interest in exclusionary systems.
Yeah. Yeah, the main founder of our tradition, his name is Sri Chaitanya, and we consider him a form of God. And he will be buried. You study his life, and there are so many similar patterns to those of Jesus in terms of how he disrupted the social status quo of the time in India, which was so prevalent in discrimination and this type of social system. And he will just embrace as his followers Muslims and people from considered outcasts and so on and so forth. And it was so challenging. He was risking so much. But
what century was that?
He was born in 1486. So it was 15th century. Yeah. So there was a very interesting phenomenon going on in India at that time. And
what city in India was he?
It was in Bengal, which is a part specifically called Navadvip, but the bigger area of Bengal.
Yes.
You have been to Kolkata, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a few hours from there, basically.
Yes.
And what do you think, Richard, will be nowadays the contemporary version of this type of spirit that Christ or Chaitanya exhibited in terms of relating with everyone and anyone, how that may take shape or express itself in the pulse of nowadays society?
We have a word in the English world, ecumenical. It's a big word, but it simply means a love of diversity. You just look at any crowd of people. It's clear God has no trouble with diversity. Look at all those faces. Not two of them the same. God is not threatened by diversity, but we are. Now those who do studies of consciousness know that the fear of diversity is an early stage, where the only way you can love something is find its similarity to you. But when you can find the non-similarity to you and still honor it and bow to it and respect it, that's the real goal.
Yeah.
But that we now know that's a higher level of consciousness. I don't mean higher in a ego sense, but just your eyes have broadened, your mind has broadened, your heart has opened, and you can see God in what is not you instead of just what is like you, which is just extended self-love. Oh, it takes us all so long to get there. Have you done any study of spiral dynamics?
I was thinking about Ken Wilber when you were talking about him.
Very good.
I didn't want to interrupt, but it came to my mind and you referred to him many times. Yeah.
Most of us, I grew up in what they call the blue level, which works as long as you have a homogeneous world. Like I grew up in Kansas, everybody in our neighborhood and school was Catholic and German and farmer. And it was very easy to have a sense of trust, but we didn't realize that it was only an extension of the self. Thank God I left to join the Franciscans young, where I had to meet early some people who were not like me, who were Italian and English.
That sounds like enough dose of challenge.
And they had different. And many times they were more attractive than my German background. And then to get to go to places like India, wow.
That's for sure. Shifting so many things.
That does it,
Yeah, whether you like it or not, India's experience, because people may not like it, but for sure it takes you out of your comfort zone, and many things are so in your face, so to say. They are not endeavoring to cover up stuff.
In your face. So
that's intense. That's intense. Richard, something that comes to my mind also, I quoted how you refer to our tradition by speaking about how Krishna consciousness sees God's joy everywhere, but something else that I really loved when I read it, that was in your book, The Divine Dance, which speaks on the Trinity.
The Trinity.
Which I really appreciated because, of course, you use the term perichoresis for describing this notion of...
God, you're a good student. Greek words you learn. Go ahead.
No, and for me, I was shocked because in our own tradition, we have this like ultimate depiction of reality as a sacred dance as well. We call it Rasa Lila, in which is basically God with other lovers, so to say, sacred lovers, and dancing and celebrating the fullness of life, basically. So the conception that ultimate reality is a sacred dance was unique. And in that context, of course, you are talking about the Trinity in that book and the ongoing dancing dynamics between the three of them, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And you refer to the terms, Sanskrit terms again, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Yeah.
That's right. I say that. In that book.
And we are so familiar with those three because
those three, and
for me, it was like an epiphany because Sat, Chit, Ananda means like being, knowledge, and happiness, so to say, or existence, consciousness, and joy, however you like to put it.
Perfect.
And you related those three with the three members of the Trinity, and you reached that conclusion on your own, I suppose. And I was like, wow, wait a minute. Because those three terms, Satchidananda, we also use them with another slightly terminology, also Sandini, Sambit, Ladini, to refer to three forms of the divine, which somehow constitute our own Trinity. Balaram, Krishna, and Radha. I'm saying that for those who follow my tradition.
Oh, sure.
So I was like, wow, you have your Trinity. You connect that with these three terms, which actually speak about our own Trinity. And probably you didn't know about that to that detail, but for me it was like, completely humbling and overwhelming. Like how interesting how we can reach to the same conclusion from different
From a
places
different starting point.
without knowing that we are reaching
Yes.
there, but intuitively being carried in that direction.
How lovely. And are two more personal?
Again, sorry?
Two of those faces of God
Mhm.
are more personal, and one is more impersonal?
I will say in this case, the three of them are, in my terms, radically personal.
Good, good.
And even one of them is a female aspect of the divinity.
Oh,
So we will speak in terms of the supreme goddess, so to say.
we
Which-
try to
which
make
is-
the Holy Spirit feminine,
Uh-huh.
and we're succeeding at it
Mhm.
a little better than most of
Mm.
our history
Mm.
had it.
And you connected the Holy Spirit in your book with Ananda, which is bliss.
Bliss.
And actually, in our tradition, the same. This divine female is Radha is connected with the principle of Ladini or Ananda or bliss. So it's basically different words for the same point. And Richard, in this connection, God as Trinity, God as a community. If you would like to share a few words, because I know that for some, maybe even for some Christians as well, and I will say for some members of my tradition, may be complex to conceive, and maybe it's not the idea to think so much about it. God as in plural terms, and at the same time retain the non-dual foundation of that, no? Because many people may tend to go, God is generally, as you were saying, one, and not only one, mostly male, two male, all this and that, and that creates some problems. So how you deal internally with this triune dynamics, the triple dynamic, so to say, in the divine?
Divine unity is diversity in love with itself.
Mm.
That's what the doctrine of Trinity is trying to say. We haven't developed it very well, but some say, the first philosophical problem is the problem of the one and the many, unity and diversity. You have to bless both. And the Christian way of doing that was, Jesus' way of doing that was seeing himself as the Son of God, God his Father, and him giving us, sharing with us the Holy Spirit. It took 3 centuries for Christianity to try to process that paradoxical language. And most Christians still don't really tend to bother with it. They wouldn't deny the Trinity, but they don't get in the dance where they're invited. Yeah. Dance is such a wonderful metaphor because it's a non-necessary movement. It's a gracious movement. It's a choiceful movement. It's a joyful movement.
We'll use a word for that is lila, which basically means a celebratory movement. Like God is moving, not lila. Yeah, sometimes it's translated as divine play. So we have this notion that God plays, and by play means he's not in need of acting to attain something, but he just acts out of the fullness of the celebration of his own fullness. He's overflowing in love, and he cannot just keep quiet, so he has to dance. In fact, one name for Krishna, for God in our tradition, is Natavar, which means the king of dancers.
Really, Natavar.
Yeah, Natavar. Yeah.
Natavar.
Yeah, the topmost
king
dancer.
of dancers.
He keeps,
that's so lovely.
Yeah.
Why should we be threatened by that?
Yeah. I once
they
heard.
They don't get to meet people like you, and that's why they are threatened.
I once heard I never was able to find the exact quote, but I heard that Nietzsche, who famously said God is dead in its own way, he will also say, and I have to find the reference, if God will come to me as a dancer, I will immediately surrender to him.
Ooh. Nietzsche said that. Yeah.
Like,
Nietzsche
I
was
cannot
a dream
accept
I
it.
had last week. I can't remember all that he was doing, but
Uh-huh.
it was a very positive encounter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I was like, yes, God. He will say God must be a dancer. No, God cannot but be dance, which again is the dynamic of Trinity and the different notions
and the interactive nature between two persons, two relationships. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
No, thank you. Richard, let me shift topic for a minute.
Okay.
Let me ask you, because you are a Franciscan Friar, not a monk. Sorry for that wrong designation.
Matter. Just words.
But interestingly, you are generally not seen wearing your traditional Franciscan robes.
No.
So, of course, I've heard the different presentations you made on why you are not doing that. But I would like to ask you here to give our audience a chance to know the inner spirit behind that.
It's just where I'm at. I'm 81 now, and
I loved your clothes here. I love your Franciscan robes, but this shirt is beautiful. Everything.
Well, brown and white are our colors.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It just
I heard you once saying you don't want to take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, there's one.
And I really appreciated that. I really took that to heart, and that made me, as I told you, inspired me to say, well, probably I may need to take off my robes and see how I see myself. Even.
As long as you're free to.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
I am, yeah.
And I'm free to wear it at the appropriate time, where it doesn't create division, and it doesn't create hierarchy, and it doesn't create adoration. I mean, the sweet Hispanic ladies, if I come in my lovely little brown robe, they want to kiss my hand.
You're already floating for them. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's so unnecessary. You know, makes you think you're better than you are, makes them believe that you're better than you are, and that ordinariness is not enough. So I only wear it on occasion. You know what Francis wore, the brown robe, which was just undyed wool, and the rope. The reason he put a rope around his waist was that in 13th century Italy, your belt, well, you carried your money. You didn't have a wallet yet. And he wanted to show he wasn't carrying money on him.
That's the point.
So he wore a rope, but later became this pious, the lovely friar with his rope belt. It's okay.
And I appreciate the point that you mentioned in terms of the danger of adoration and the danger of thinking that you are higher than what you are, and as you say, ordinariness is not enough. Some people may think that, and it should be enough.
And you have to live up.
Yeah, and I've seen
to be smiling all the time.
Yeah, and I've seen so many sincere people in that situation, finding unsustainable to remain there because they need to play superhero for everyone,
a persona,
like the community
role.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for asking. It's not a big deal. If you would have asked me to come today in my robe, I could have, but I'm glad you didn't.
I'm glad you didn't come in your robes either, although I love those, but I really appreciate the place from which you are wearing.
You must have seen the Friar. No, that's French. What's the Frati? That's Italian. What's Spanish? Frey is our title in the Spanish.
Fraile.
That's the plural. Yeah. That's what we are down there.
You have been in South America?
Oh, yes. Not so much in Argentina. I got to give retreats in Chile, in Peru, in Venezuela, most of Central America. I don't know why I didn't get invited to beautiful Argentina.
You're not pious enough yet, sorry.
But now our Pope is from there. Yes, he says you had to go to the ends of the earth to find the Pope.
It's so funny because actually I realized that the Pope, I mean, when I was a child, in Argentina, everyone loves soccer. It's kind of second religion or first, probably. And I had my own team as a child. And I realized, everyone had. And I realized that the Pope had the same team I had.
Really?
And generally the teams have to do with areas where you live, where it's prevalent, this team, that team. So I was like, okay, maybe the Pope lived nearby. So I did some research, and it happened that he lived like 15 blocks from where I lived.
15 blocks.
So we were neighbors, not in time because we were, but we were living so closely. I will just walk by his place so many times in my
He invited me to come and talk 2 years ago. What a dear soul. What a humble man. He said, my English isn't good, but just talk slowly and I'll read your lips.
Okay.
And I could see he was following my lips and seemed to get everything I was trying to say. Yeah, what a dear. Give me the name of that soccer team.
San Lorenzo de Almagro.
San Lorenzo. Yeah.
It has a saint there, so we are good situated.
How neat is that?
Yeah. I remember you told me last year when you were narrating in detail your whole entering into the Vatican and the whole experience.
The ballrooms of medieval art and Renaissance art.
Which was the name of this person that was taking you there, that they cannot talk, and you were asking them so many questions?
The Swiss Guard. I had these beautiful, dressed in a Michelangelo outfit, and I teased them. I said, could we change? I was in my brown robe, and they were in their Michelangelo garish blue and orange and red, if I don't remember.
Yeah, so many colors.
And I said, can we change outfits? I think yours is much more classy.
Yeah.
They stopped, they turned to me and they saluted. And I said, oh God, I did something wrong. And they can't talk when they're leading you to the Pope. They just let you know that they heard what you said.
Okay.
And they do that by saluting you. All protocols, you know.
But after all those layers of protocol, you get to meet the Pope, which
finally, after walking through 13 ballrooms
of protocol.
He must be so embarrassed by it.
I can imagine.
He would love to get out of there. And they say he does sneak out.
Oh, really?
That he wears ordinary clothes and walks the streets so no one, with dark glasses, so no one would know he's the Pope. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. So you told me that when you met him, you gave him a copy of the Universal Christ in Spanish, and he said, no, thank you, I don't need it. And
he pulled among his book. He held it up like a little schoolboy. I've already read it. He said, really? The Pope has read my book? He loved it, he said. So that made me very happy. Yeah.
He's very open also for interfaith dialogue.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know if it was him or before him, you correct me, Richard, that it was officially saying the church that people from other traditions also reach heaven, so to say. It's not only up to us that we have the
corner on eternity. So unbelievable that anybody would think that.
They think that
God is so small that he only likes little tribes, and he punishes other tribes, but everybody does it. Everybody. It's the unaffirmed ego that makes itself special by being chosen and others are not chosen.
As you say, that can be maybe the ultimate absurdity, because trying to limit the unlimited, we find that trying to project limitation, the infinite, is kind of like
the infinite.
My gosh.
We can't imagine infinite anything. This mind is incapable of it.
Yeah. Our doctrine points to that. It's called Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, which means unconceivable unity in diversity.
Ooh.
That's like our metaphysical stance. As you say before, there's unity, diversity, the two need to coexist, but it's Achintya, or it's transrational. It goes above our heads, so to say. Yeah.
And now that we keep discovering more galaxies, shouldn't that be a concept we should relish? More galaxies and more. And the Webb telescope does not bump up against the end of the universe. It just keeps moving. What's the end point going to be?
Is there an end point?
And this God cares about what we wear.
Come. Our suffocating boundaries.
Suffocating. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate meetings like this with you, or like with other fellow Christians or other traditions. Like I told you, I invited Brian McLaren or Elia Daly or Adam Boko, Rory McKenty, such incredible people. Now you are here. And in my book on radical personalism, I use the term theological cross-pollination. And I know you don't like big words, so sorry for me to bring that to the table. Word. Another way of saying interfaith dialogue, but theological, like cross-pollination, and like the analogy of nourishing each other, and from what we receive from each other, we can like integrate that into our own practice. And that's what I've experienced, not only today with you, but in general these days in the CAC retreat. I've been so much
thank you for coming all the way here,
so nourished. And for me, the epiphany, and it became kind of a repeated line that I share with many people these days, which like we have so much in common, for example, between mystical Christianity and my tradition, that even if some differences are there, which are there, they end up being ornaments, as I told you today.
I call them accidents.
But for me, those differences in the context of the foundational unity we share, the differences become ornaments.
Ornaments, I like that.
You told me you like that
word. I'm
word.
going to use that.
Yeah. So let's keep ornamenting. And for me, that gives so much hope in the situation we live in the world, where there's so much polarization and black and white thinking and us and them. So having this conversation.
If we can only love sameness, we're in trouble. We're in major trouble for the future of humanity. And when we look at the state of humanity right now, we see this inability in the so-called Holy Land, in Ukraine and Russia, in tribes in Africa who are both black, but they somehow know that I'm this tribe and you're that tribe.
Or I'm blacker than you are, or less black than you are.
Oh my. Please, let us grow up.
And if everything will be sameness, also it will be so boring, no?
Boring.
Desperately boring. I will go crazy. We will think the same, have the same opinions always.
See, that's a good argument for you wearing your robe here in the land of enchantment. This tends to be a rather tolerant state. I don't know. I guess because the natives are still so strong here. The Spanish didn't bring toleration, but it was here before.
I'm from Argentina, and I can also give my testimony from what the visitors brought there. So
the poor Spanish, they had to defend themselves from the Moors, as they call them, those who came over, and it created a very defensive Catholicism. Unfortunate. Now they regret it, but they can't undo what the conquistadors did. And that's our culture here.
We have to invoke some other form of conquering now by love and humility, and let's conquer each other's hearts.
There you go.
Like that. So Richard, I don't want to take more of your time. I'm so glad that you came. It's a dream come true.
Glad.
You're a very special mentor in my life, so I really appreciate sharing with you.
You're good. You're good.
I don't know if you would like to have anything else to share to us, some last words on anything that come to your mind? If not, we
You've
can
asked
conclude here.
nothing but good questions. You just gave me a chance to say what comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to prepare a talk or special words. Thank you for making it so easy. My voice is getting old. It's not easy to listen to, but you're easy to listen to. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Is it possible if I request you some closing blessing like you so beautifully do so many times, so we can join with you and all of us be blessed by those words?
Speaking of the Pope from Argentina, Pope Francis, he made a beautiful statement about a month ago, speaking of the gay, lesbian, binary people who asked for a blessing. And some people were upset, no, we can't give a blessing. He said, you don't give a blessing because someone is worthy of it, because that gets you involved in all kind of moral machinations of, worthiness or unworthiness. You give a blessing because someone asks for it. Brilliant. Brilliant. Because someone asked for it. Well, you just asked for it, which means you've got it already. Excuse me.
It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you. We're to give blessings to anybody who asks for it. So, no, Swami, you are blessed. and it's bouncing back to me. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much to all of you for watching. And again, for those who would like to contact Richard's work and teachings, you can again visit, as I'm sharing, their website for the Center for Action and Contemplation, which is cac.org. cac.org. And see you in 2 weeks again for our next episode of the Free Radical Podcast. Thank you again, Richard.
You're wonderful. Thank you, Swami.